Today we continue our series on the Four Cardinal Virtues with Fortitude. And our scripture lesson today is taken from Daniel chapter 3, the entire chapter. Daniel chapter 3. I will be reading today from the Common English Bible translation of God's Holy Word. And I invite you all to listen for the Word of God. King Nebuchadnezzar made a gold statue. It was 90 feet high and 9 feet wide. He set it up in the Dura Valley in the province of Babylon. King Nebuchadnezzar then ordered the chief administrators, ministers, governors, counselors, treasurers, judges, magistrates, and all the provincial officials to assemble and come for the dedication of the statue that he had set up. So the chief administrators, ministers, governors, counselors, treasurers, judges, magistrates, and all the provincial officials assembled for the dedication of the statue that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. They stood in front of the statue the king had set up, and the herald proclaimed loudly, "Peoples, nations, languages, this is what you must do. When you hear the sound of the horn, pipe, zither, lyre, harp, and flute, and every kind of instrument, you must bow down and worship the gold statue that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. Anyone who will not bow down and worship will be immediately thrown into a furnace of flaming fire." And so because of this order, as soon as they heard the sound of the horn, pipe, zither, lyre, harp, flute, and every other kind of instrument, all the peoples, nations, and languages bowed down and worshipped the gold statue that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. At that moment, some Chaldeans came forward, seizing a chance to attack the Jews. And they said to King Nebuchadnezzar, "O long live the king! Your Majesty, you gave a command that everyone who hears the sound of the horn, pipe, zither, lyre, harp, flute, and every kind of instrument should bow down and worship the gold statue. Anyone who wouldn't bow and worship would be thrown into a furnace of flaming fire. Now there were some Jews, ones you appointed, to administer the province of Babylon, specifically Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who have ignored your command. They don't serve your gods, and they don't worship the gold statue that you set up." In a violent rage, Nebuchadnezzar ordered them to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and they were brought before the king. Nebuchadnezzar said to them, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, is it true you don't serve my gods or worship the gold statue I've set up? If you are now ready to do so, bow down and worship the gold statue I've made. When you hear the sound of horn, pipe, zither, lyre, harp, flute, and every other kind of instrument. But if you won't worship it, you will be thrown straight into a furnace of flaming fire. Then what God will rescue you from my power?" Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered King Nebuchadnezzar, "We don't need to answer your question. If our God, the one we serve, is able to rescue us from the furnace of flaming fire and from your power, your Majesty, then let him rescue us. But if he doesn't know this for certain, your Majesty, we will never serve your gods or worship the gold statue that you set up." And Nebuchadnezzar was filled with rage, and his face twisted beyond recognition because of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And in response, he commanded that the furnace of fire be heated to 7 times its normal heat. He told some of the strongest men in the army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and throw them into the furnace of flaming fire. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were bound, still dressed in all their clothes, and thrown into the furnace of flaming fire. Now the king's command had been rash, and the furnace was heated to such an extreme that the fire's flame killed the very men who carried Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to it. So these 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell bound into the furnace of flaming fire. And then King Nebuchadnezzar jumped up in a shock and said to his associates, "Didn't we throw 3 men bound into the fire?" And they answered the king, "Certainly, your Majesty." He replied, "Look, I see 4 men, unbound, walking around inside the fire, and they aren't hurt. And the fourth one looks like one of the gods. Nebuchadnezzar went near the opening of the furnace of flaming fire and said, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out, come here. And then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out of the fire. The chief administrators, ministers, governors, and the king's associates crowded around to look at them. The fire hadn't done anything to them. Their hair wasn't singed, their garments looked the same as before, and they didn't even smell like fire. Nebuchadnezzar declared, May the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be praised. He sent his messenger to rescue his servants who trusted him. They ignored the king's orders, sacrificing their bodies because they wouldn't serve or worship any god but their God. Now I issue a decree to every people, nation, and language, whoever speaks disrespectfully about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego's God will be torn limb from limb, and their house made a trash heap, because there is no other God who can rescue like this. And then the king made Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego prosperous in the province of Babylon. The word of God for the people of God.
Thanks be to God.
Let us pray. O holy God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be holy and acceptable to you. For you are our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. One of the things that I absolutely love to do, I love to talk with World War II veterans and heroes. I love talking with Jim about what went on. And I've talked with several World War II vets along the way. And they all have this one thing in common. If you ever get a chance, Jim's going to get back at me. Just talk to Jim and ask him how things went. They all have this in common. They all say, I was just doing my duty. I just did what everybody else was doing. It's nothing special. I was just serving my country just like everyone says that. Every one of them says that. It's amazing. And we look at the wonderful people that made the world safe again. And they all say, it really wasn't that big of a deal. Many of our World War II vets aren't even able to talk about their experiences even to this day. And many only started later in life. But every one of them, everyone I've ever talked with says, we just did it. It was something that needed to be done, and we just did. I got some quotes from some World War II veterans here. And we always think of them, and rightfully so, as amazing heroes. But as they were going into some horrible situations, let me read some of the quotes from people that looked back. I never moved into combat without feeling a cold hand reaching into my guts and twisting them into knots. Another said, I was scared before every battle. That old instinct of self-preservation is a pretty basic thing. Another, I don't know what bravery is. And yet another, I have a deadly hatred of fear. It has me by the throat, and I am not brave. Oddly enough, all of these were said by the same World War II veteran. Any guesses as far as who that might be? Would you believe Audie Murphy? We don't think of those things when we think of Audie Murphy. Audie Murphy was the most decorated soldier in all of World War II. He received every United States medal that he could possibly receive for valor. And I want to get all of this straight because the man he received so many awards. He also received awards from the French and Belgian awards for heroism. He received the Medal of Honor for valor demonstrated at the age of 19. 19 years old for single-handedly holding off an entire company of soldiers for an hour at the Colmar Pocket in France in January 1945, and then leading a successful counterattack while wounded and out of ammunition. That's what we think of when we think of Audie Murphy. We don't think of someone that says, I'm not a brave man. My insides are just twisted in knots. And why is that? We love the strong and the brave. We love watching John Wayne, don't we? I mean, that's our man's man. We love Clint Eastwood, the strong silent type. We're not so thrilled about a soldier that's kind of cowering in a foxhole going, just terrified. Why is it? Because we think that the opposite of fear is bravery. That's what we think. And that is so wrong. The opposite of fear is not bravery. If you look at what some of these men did, they were absolutely terrified. And I deny you to tell me that these aren't brave men we're talking about here. So we get kind of confused. But the virtue that we're talking about is fortitude. It's bravery. It's strength when you need it. So let me tell you some other things that Audie Murphy said. I was scared before every battle. That old instinct of self-preservation is a pretty basic thing. And he continues, though. But while the action was going on, some part of my mind shut off. And my training and discipline took over. I did what I had to do. He went on to say, people are very quick to ridicule others for showing fear, but we rarely know the secret springboards behind human action. The man who shows great fear today may be tomorrow's hero. Who are we to judge? He says, I don't know what bravery is. Sometimes it takes more courage to get up and run than to stay. You either just do it or you don't. I got so scared the first day in combat, I just decided to go along with it. And he says, I'll tell you what bravery really is. Bravery is just the determination to do a job that you know has to be done. The determination to do a job that you know has to be done. Not because you have a lack of fear, but in spite of your fear, in spite of being terrified out of your wits, you're going to do what needs to be done. And if we look at what God says about bravery, what does God say about fortitude, strength? I think our good Lieutenant Murphy is going to agree with God. That bravery is not the opposite of fear. If you've seen the movie Facing the Giants, great movie by the way. If you've seen it, you may have heard a quote in there that says, God says in the Bible 365 times, don't be afraid. And not that I don't believe everything that's in a movie or on the internet, because if it's in a movie or on the internet, I mean, it's the truth, right? But I thought I'd check this one out. And there was a woman who shared my skepticism a little bit, and her name is Millie Jones. She went through and counted every verse in the Bible that said, don't be afraid or don't fear. And she came up with 145. Folks, 145 verses is a lot. It may not be one for every day, but 145 times when God is saying, don't be afraid, don't fear. Because God knows, just like Audie Murphy, that fear is going to tie us up in knots, and we're going to become paralyzed, and we're going to do nothing when we need to be doing something. God's going to say, don't fear, don't, 145 times. What is it that we're afraid of? I mean, as we look at our world today, I mean, I think so many people are gripped with fear. What is it that people in our society are afraid of today? What are some of them? I'm sorry? Terrorists. Many people, some people to the point of not being able to function, are afraid of terrorists. Well, great. What else? Afraid of flying. A lot of people are afraid of flying. We've only been doing it a little over 100 years. We might get this down with it. If we're afraid of flying, what are some other things? We're afraid of answering the question that the pastor... I'm sorry. We're afraid of losing our job. A lot of people are afraid of losing their job. Amanda went to Blum with me this morning. She said, public speaking. Public speaking. Public speaking always ranks number one on everybody's list of fears. Jerry Seinfeld said that, if you look, And the number one fear of everyone is public speaking. That means that when you go to a funeral, most people would rather be in the casket than delivering the eulogy. So we're just afraid. What are some other things that we're afraid of? Snakes. We don't like snakes. Others, what else? Cancer. So many of us are afraid of cancer. That's a biggie right there.
Just being loved.
We're afraid of being loved?
Or not being loved.
I would say both sometimes. Maybe so, but we're afraid someone's not going to love us. And I think a lot of times, I'm going to get back up line in just a minute, but hang on to that one because we're going to come back. That's a big one. That's a huge one. Other thoughts of what we're afraid of? Yeah, Terry, what you got? We're afraid of losing our families and those people that do love us. And that's you're afraid, especially for older, that we're not going to be able to take care of ourselves. And like we took care of our kids may have to take care of us. So many things. And I think that what we do so much of the time is this fear hits us, it grabs us, it knocks our intestines, and we are terrified and paralyzed. Why are we afraid of these things? Why do we think that, what is it about these things? Why are we afraid of snakes? We can't, they're poisonous. I thought you were going to say, they're just ugly. We can't control them. Ooh, I'm sorry, we're only talking about snakes. We're talking about everything else that we mentioned here. So why are we afraid of cancer? You can't control it. Why are we concerned about losing our jobs? We can't control it. We see, as people in modern societies, we have this false view that we're in control. We actually believe that. We think that we can make people love us. And we think that if we speak in public, we think that if we stand up and say things, we think if we try something and we fail, oh my, we can talk about failure. Oh, we're all terrified of failure. We don't want to fail. And if we try something new and we fail, people might find out that we're not as great as we think we are. They might realize that we're normal just like everybody else. And guess what? We failed. And we're afraid of snakes. And we're terrified to speak in public because someone might not love us. Embarrassment. They might laugh at us. Or worse yet, I might tell a joke and they might not laugh at us. We're terrified because we can't control them. Why? Because God didn't set the world up like that. God's in control. If you haven't heard, God's in control. And that would mean that we're not. God runs the place. He lets us hang out. And so we forget. God's got this. God's got this under control. God made snakes. God created us to occasionally be embarrassed when people laugh at us. But mainly, God created us to love and to be loved. And when this fear of failure grips us to the point that we're paralyzed, and we don't have that intestinal fortitude that Audie Murphy talked about. Not a lack of fear. We're not talking about a lack of fear. We're talking about doing what we need to do even though we are afraid. Even though we're terrified to do something. We do it anyway. You see, fortitude is not the opposite of fear. Bravery is not the opposite of fear. I really question whether you can have bravery if you don't have fear. I think they may call that just stupidity. I'm not sure. But if you don't know what you're going into and you don't have a little bit of that, I really question whether or not we can have bravery. Now, if we look at our story today, I love this story about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. I learned it when I was a little kid. But there's the one part in this that is my all-time favorite. They didn't stress. When you're a little kid, they stress that fourth person in the fire, right? I mean, we all know about that. I almost stopped the scripture reading before I even got that far. Because I think the story ends way before they even get tossed into the fiery furnace. I think the story's over. Because they bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego before the king. And the king says, if you don't do what I tell you, I'm going to burn you to death. I don't know if you know anything about burning to death. It ain't fun. And the three guys, I love this. The Bible doesn't say they weren't afraid. They were surrounded by the king's guards. The king had a furnace going out there, and I'm guessing this was not a new thing for him. He executed people all the time. And they knew what was waiting for them. I imagine they were absolutely terrified. But they say, King, buddy, we're not even going to answer your question. It doesn't even warrant an answer because our God can save us. And if our God can save us, King, then so be it. I love this next part. And this is where we fall down a lot. Even if he doesn't, even if God decides to let us burn up in this fire, King, we ain't going to do what you said. We're going to worship our God because we got the true God. And King, sorry, buddy, you lose. Oh, that puts Audie Murphy to shame right there. Wow. That is fortitude. That is bravery. That's not a lack of fear. That is, they don't know. They're saying, we might burn up, but even if we do, God, we're not going to serve your gods. We're going to serve the real God. That is the way we need to be. And as we look at the fears that we have, as we look at all the reasons that we just freeze, because we think we're in control. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they knew otherwise. They knew otherwise. But I've always heard it said, if you don't have faith, a crisis is a lousy time to get it. If you don't have faith, a crisis is not the time to start. Before the king, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, if they didn't go in with their faith, that was no time to start developing it. By that time, they're given a choice. Keep your faith or burn up. Keep your faith and burn up or go free. Well, we don't have that much faith anyway. We're out of here. If you don't have faith, a crisis is no time to get in. And looking around this room, there's been a lot of people in this room in crisis, and you can ask them, and they will say exactly the same thing. You have to be ready with your faith when you go in. So how are we doing on that point? How are we doing? Are we preparing our faith every day for not if, but when that crisis hits? Are we getting ready today for that crisis that may hit tomorrow? Because another thing that we're all afraid of is the unknown. We don't know what the future has. But we know what today has. Today has us. It has God. And it has an opportunity for us to build our faith. Will we build our faith when we have a chance? Or will we wait to a crisis when it's too late? Our prayers, let's start today. Let's start now. Let's keep praying. Let's keep studying God's holy word. Let's keep worshiping together. Let's keep meeting. Let's sing out loud like we mean it when we sing God's praise. Build our faith today. Because we don't know what tomorrow holds. Would you pray with me? Holy loving God, we thank you for so many opportunities to serve you, to be in relationship with you, to praise you, to glorify you for the fact that you are God. We ask that you would help us to continue to build our relationship with you, that you would help us to read the scriptures, to pray, to listen, to meditate, and to spend time with our fellow believers, so that when the time of crisis comes, we will have bravery, the certainty that you're in control, that we need to go through. We ask this in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.